My name is Chris Hedges. I spent 7 years in the Middle East. I was the Middle East bureau chief for the New York Times. And because I'm an Arabic speaker, I spent most of my time in the occupied territories, especially in Gaza. Because the Israelis can't do anything without the acquiescence of the U.S. government. And the moment that there's enough popular support against the war crimes that are being committed against the population in Gaza, that is probably the most effective mechanism to make the abuse and suffering of the Gazans end. As long as the United States government refuses to prohibit or permits the Israeli government to continue this form of collective punishment and abuse, it will continue. And the moment the American government finally demands a halt to it, it will halt. Well, because it's a part of a whole kind of, the same thing is happening on a smaller scale in the West Bank, where what they've done is reduce Palestinians to living in surrounded ghettos, in essence, about 8 of them on the West Bank. When you take a map and you look at the ring roads and how they connect up with Jewish settlements and the closed military areas, you find 8 pod-like structures that in an instant can be cut off, and often are cut off by the Israeli military. You just have a larger ghetto in Gaza itself. And the object is to reduce Palestinians to a subsistence level. Most Palestinians are now living on about $2 a day, a kind of Africanization of the Palestinians. And that is the Israeli tactic, one, to encourage ethnic cleansing, to push people out. Much of the middle class has now already left the West Bank. Much of the middle class left Gaza a while ago. And those that remain live in such dire poverty that daily existence becomes such a struggle that they are essentially broken. Their resistance, their capacity to resist is broken. That's the policy. You know, I'm a great supporter of nonviolent resistance, and I think that the flotillas to Gaza are a perfect example of sort of shaming the Israelis for the crimes that they are committing, bringing attention to the plight of the Palestinians in Gaza to the rest of the world in a nonviolent and a peaceful way. And for that, I think, you know, if we just keep battering against that door, if we just have the kind of resolve to be persistent over time, I think that Israel has become such a pariah state that its policies against the Palestinians are becoming known and denounced by even many people who would be defined as Israeli supporters in the United States, that moral force is on our side. And if we are steadfast in our efforts, I believe we can have a significant effect. Well, you can't get aid into Gaza. That's the problem. We can raise all sorts of money, and the Israelis won't let it in. There's a blockade. And I think that aid is important, of course, but as any Palestinian will tell you, the power of these flotillas and of active resistance on the part of people outside Gaza is extremely important. I'm not pretending that it's more important than food, but I think it gives many Palestinians the heart to keep going, to know that they're not alone, to know that we stand with them. So yes, they are incredibly expensive, but even if we turned all this money over to medical and food supplies, the Israelis wouldn't let it in. I mean, that's just been a persistent policy. So that's really, finally, not even an option. You know, these flotillas are just copying what Jewish refugees were doing to the British. It's exactly the same tactic, and it was a pretty effective tactic then, and I think it's a pretty effective tactic now. It is. Does it impact on the Israelis? Of course. Look at the Israeli response to the Turkish ships and the reaction not only in Turkey but throughout the world at large. Over it exposed the brutality of the Israeli occupation to those people that hadn't been closely monitoring what's happening to Palestinians in Gaza. I mean, I think it really came home to the wider world at large. So, sure, I think that it empowers or gives a kind of support to those elements within Israel, and I lived in Jerusalem, that are there, that would also like to see justice. And I think that the more that we are able to act, the more that we are able to, in nonviolent means, use our bodies to illustrate the injustices that are being committed, the more the power of the Israeli government erodes.